Well, not a day passes when someone on the left doesn't call the president a dictator. But for some, because they're against dictators, but for some reason, they don't have much to say about China, home of actual dictators, a country whose human rights record remains atrocious, even as it grows more powerful economically. In the far west of China, as many as 1 million Muslims have been detained in concentration camps, while Beijing has used restrictive laws and the mass immigration of ethnic Chinese to the region to stamp out their native culture. Christians, meanwhile, and other faiths face repression as well. But big tech and other American companies who do business in China don't seem to care at all. They're happy to profit from all of this. Senator Marco Rubio is one of the very few lawmakers who does care, and we recently talked to him about it. Senator, that's a remarkable number. 1 million Chinese Muslims in camps.
Right.
Because the Chinese government cracks down on them because of their religion. Why, A, is that true? And B, why don't we hear more about it?
It's absolutely true. In fact, one of the outrages here is Google Earth. Pictures from Google Earth show us these camps. And so we read these reports about Google looking to partner up with China again, going back to China. But it's their own pictures that have revealed this reality to the world. They open these places up, they call them re-education camps, where they're basically forcing people to change their names and do all sorts of things. By the way, there's no history of radicalism among this community of Uyghurs. That's the first point. But here's the outrage. Number one, American companies and Western companies that have sold them surveillance technology that have allowed them to sort of put people through some of this, including an American DNA company. They're collecting the DNA of these individuals, by the way, as well, forcefully, and using potentially American technology to do it. And what about the Arab world and the Muslim world and all these countries in the Middle East? Not a single one of them. You know, they're the first to stand up and speak when there's a ban on travel or this or that. But they've been totally silent on this issue. And the answer is money. There's all this Chinese money flowing all over the world. They're bribing governments, and in this case, buying their silence on this atrocious, outrageous human rights violations that give us insight into the true nature of the regime of President Xi in China.
That is remarkable. So the government of Saudi Arabia, government of Egypt, two of the largest Arab governments in the world, they have not pressured China to stop cracking down on Muslims?
In fact, it's not mentioned at all in international forums either. Last week, finally, for the first time, they were confronted with it, and the Chinese were forced to answer some questions by an international organism, but not by some of these countries, many of whom have said very little of anything. And if they've said it, it's been very benign, nothing forceful. In essence, if there were 1 million people of any religion being rounded up anywhere in the world by a Western nation, I assure you would be hearing all about it, and rightfully so. But in this case, because these countries have leaders, many of whom have either taken bribes from the Chinese or that there's Chinese investment involved and promises of more money to come, they've been able to buy their silence. Hypocrisy, outrageous, unacceptable. And I'm glad that this administration is looking into doing something about it.
I want to start off with there is a article at chinapartnership.org, updated September 11th. And you want statements? Let me tell you about statements that actually really cost you. A lot is going on in China. And there are two things to keep in mind. China is using Orwell as a how-to book. 1984 is 2018. And yet the point is now that China has technology that Orwell could not have possibly thought of. And as a result, facial recognition software and the ability to track people, those view screens from Orwell, now they're real. Now they're just real. And the ability to control people in this way is, it's every dystopian movie maker's dream, except that it's real. And so if all those movies were supposed to be warnings, nobody's been listening. They are establishing, and again, from a Christian worldview, this makes perfect sense. There is an absolute cult of the state that is fundamental in China now. And the state is everything. And therefore, any other claims to ultimate authority, specifically monotheistic religions primarily, is a threat to the state, and hence is heresy. And so China is cracking down on both Christians and Muslims. So you have a group I had never heard of before just a few weeks ago called the Uyghurs. Muslims of, I don't know anything about them. I don't know if they're Sunni, Shia, something different. I don't know. But they are being horrifically persecuted, imprisoned in the hundreds of thousands, children separated from parents, forced into re-education camps, which is nothing but mind messing around the mind, brainwashing. Specifically told they must abandon their Muslim beliefs and they must praise the state. Forced to chant prayers to the chairman and give thanks to the state before eating, and this kind of stuff. Just amazing stuff going on. And we certainly should pray for the Uyghurs. Why? They're not Christians. That's true. We want them to become Christians, and so they're not going to become Christians while being enslaved by the Chinese communists. So you pray that they will be freed, or that somehow, don't ask me how, but God's big, there would be a Christian witness that would come to them, because I sort of doubt they've had much in the way of a revelation of the truth of who Christ is or anything along those lines at all. But it's consistent what they're doing to the Uyghurs and to Christians. They're cracking down on house churches that have been in existence for many years right there in Beijing. We're well known. And as a result, 116 at the time of this writing, September 11th, 116 Chinese pastors signed joint statement on the new religious regulations. And, you know, when we think about statements, you know, we have the freedom. There have been over 7,000 people that have signed the statement on social justice and the gospel. Very thankful for that.